My father passed away in August of 1985. I was 26 years old. You know, my father, he never really talked about his experiences in World War II or his time as a prisoner of war. He would say, "Son, there's some things I'd rather not talk about." While my father was a prisoner of war, he kept a diary. Late one night after reading his diary, I Googled his name and rank, and the first link that came up was an article in the New York Times.
I was being interviewed by the New York Times in 2008. All of a sudden, I remembered that there was a Master Sergeant, Roddy Edmonds, who saved my life when he defied the Germans in POW camp. That's all I said.
In the middle of that article, Lester mentions the bravery and courage of his Master Sergeant, Roddy Edmonds. And I said, I got to find out what really happened to my dad during his POW experience.
I was born in the Bronx on August 8, 1923.
January 27, 1924.
I was born in Cleveland on April 24, 1924.
June 17th, 1925, in Brooklyn, New York. I got the draft notice shortly after I turned 18, and I reported in for the draft exam, and they found me totally acceptable. I was breathing.
I was 18 years old. I was assigned as a combat medic to care for the wounded soldiers on the battlefield.
I was in headquarters company of the 422nd Infantry Regiment of the 106th Division. And that's where I met Les Tanner.
And I was Sergeant Lester Tannenbaum of the headquarters company. And Roddy Edmonds was the Master Sergeant. Roddy grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. He probably never met a Jew in Tennessee when he went into the Army.
My dog tag had the information on it, my name and my serial number, and the letter H for Hebrew, so that if they found our bodies, they would know how to bury us.
One of the things we were told that if we were captured, we should destroy our dog tags.
Because being a Jew in that circumstance, we didn't know what our future was.
And off we went to the front. We went over as replacements for filling up the slots that had been opened by casualties. It was December, it was snowy, it was the coldest winter in 50 years.
We replaced the 2nd Division on the front, right in the Siegfried Line, on the German side of the border.
We were very vulnerable.
The men had come and were told that this was a quiet sector. And when they got here, just 6 days after they got here, the war came to them.
The first day of the attack was December 16th.
I awakened and heard shell fire.
St. Vith was being attacked. That's our division headquarters 10 miles in back of us.
We were there when the Germans broke through with the Battle of the Bulge, and they broke through in force.
They broke through north of us and south of us.
We were completely surrounded, and we knew we were cut off.
Our position was untenable, and we finally decided to make a break for it. And we are cut off and surrounded by columns of German tanks, guns, troops.
Captain Forster said, "It's hopeless."
I'm reading from my father's diary that he kept. It was a hopeless cause in our case. When Captain Foster surrendered us, he did a very wise thing. Our rifles were no good against tanks and 88 fire.
And out we came to become part of what was the largest collection of captured GIs in World War II, from the 106th, from the 28th, and others. We began to start our march to we didn't know where.
There was a concern that the Germans would just shoot us up. When you're in brutal hands, like the Germans were, you're scared as hell.
I particularly was concerned because my name was obviously Jewish.
And then we got to the railhead, Gerolstein.
They loaded us on boxcars.
We were packed like sardines in that boxcar. No food or water on the 4-day trip to Bad Orem.
So the boxcars we were in turned out to be exactly the same cars that were taking the Jews to concentration camps.
And we went further into Germany.
Boarded train, Thursday, 21 December 44. Arrived Stalag 9B, Bad Orb, Monday, 25, December 44. Registered Tuesday, 26, December 44.
We had to register. Name, rank, serial number.
But then they started asking questions about your religion.
The Germans segregated the Jewish POWs.
And we were assigned to the Jewish barracks.
Special barracks surrounded by barbed wire within the prison. We were in a prison within the prison. The order came down one day that the non-commissioned officers were getting on trucks and were being taken to another camp.
They took all the sergeants and corporals, all the non-commissioned officers, whether they were Jewish or not.
And luckily, I am taken out of that isolated place at Bad Orb, and the next thing I know, I'm on a train going to Ziegenhain.
The Jewish POWs who had been left behind were shipped to a slave labor camp.
All of them later were sent to Berger, and many of them died there.
Arrived Stalag 9A, Friday, 26, January 45. I'm walking along Main Street of Stalag 9A, Ziegenhain. People are living here, even today. It's really hard to imagine that these barracks still stand almost intact the way that they were when Dad and his men were here.
British were there, French were there, Russians were there, and now we were coming in to occupy a quadrant of that whole thing.
There were about 1,200 American prisoners. Of the 1,200, I would estimate maybe 200 were Jewish.
In Ziegenhain, in my barracks, Lester was in it, Paul was in it, Roddy was in it.
So there's about 240 men in the barracks. You were given one thin blanket. That was all you had.
You went to bed hungry, you got up hungry, you were hungry forever.
Dinner was a piece of bread. We had 10 men sharing one loaf of ersatz bread. So it was probably half flour and half sawdust.
I lost 60 pounds in 3 months. It was January 27, 1945, when the Germans announced that all Jewish American prisoners would fall out the following morning. Just them. Anyone who didn't fall out would be shot. Same thing that they had said at Bad Orb. Roddy, for the first time in his experience, was in complete command. There was no one there to give him orders. It was his decision. He said, we're not going to do that. Everyone is going to fall out just as we do every morning. That following morning, Roddy is standing at the head of formation, and I was standing by his side.
I was there, the German was there, and Lester was there. So I heard every word that the commandant said.
Major Siegmann comes up to Roddy, and he says, you can't all be Jews. And Roddy said, we are all Jews.
That famous line, we're all Jews here, that will live in Jewish history.
Takes out his Luger and puts it next to Roddy's forehead, and he says, you will order the Jews to step forward, or I will shoot you right now. And Roddy said to him, Major, you can shoot me, you can shoot all of us, but we know who you are. And this war is almost over, and you'll be a war criminal. And with that, the Major lowered his Luger, about-faced, went back to his headquarters.
We were able to track the war pretty closely, even as we were POWs. So we knew we were within days of being liberated, hopefully.
The German commanders informed Roddy that they were going to evacuate the camp.
They don't want to be around when the Americans come.
And under Roddy's leadership, we refused. And that's why I'm here to tell you about the story today.
Roddy said, we're just too weak to go on a long march.
We were in such lousy shape. The chances of coming out of that alive are not good.
Nobody marches out of camp. you break ranks and you run back into the barracks. And you keep doing that all day.
The day dawns, and in come the Germans. House, house!
Rouse, getting up, going back and forth.
We can see the British are moving out. Everybody else is moving out. We're still standing there. Finally, they give up, the Germans.
The German officers came up to Roddy and said, okay, camp is yours. And they marched out. We were left alone in the camp.
It gets very quiet. So now a few of us climb up on the roof of our barracks, and then we see 2 lines of tanks.
We were liberated on March 30th by an American armored group.
The 6th Armored Division, as it turns out.
They were amazed to see these American soldiers, thin, hungry. It was such a happy day.
We were liberated on March 30th, which was the 2nd day of Passover.
And every time I ran a Seder, I would make this point because it was the date of my freedom.
I've made new friends and lost some. I don't know whether all my boys are alive or not, but I pray that they are. It all seems sort of a bad dream.
Well, they took us to Camp Lucky Strike, and I lost track of Roddy, and I never saw him again after that day, but it was never out of my mind. I have to tell you, that experience and Roddy was a defining experience in my life.
Roddy was incredible. He never really got his recognition, except among us.
We were very lucky to have him with us.
That such people can exist gives you hope, maybe, for humanity.
We stood there, we were the witnesses. We were the witnesses.
I've been following the footsteps of my father, and it's led me here. The lives of 200 Jewish men were forever changed right here.
It wasn't only my life. Our lives multiplied. I have 4 children. I have 6 grandchildren. I have 2 great-grandchildren. So I would have 18 people that wouldn't be here without him. Multiply that by 200, and you can see how important that decision has been.
That's the biggest joy for me, is to see the real people, the lives that have been touched and changed.
Roddy could no more have turned over any of his men to the Nazis than he could stop breathing. He just couldn't do it. A righteous man.